For the latest on Capitol Hill, I want to welcome on Representative Ralph Norman, the congressman serving South Carolina's 5th District. So, Congressman, you and I have been talking about this possibility of a coronavirus relief bill now for the better part of several weeks. The kind of pushback that is being experienced. Democrats, of course, want a more hefty bill. Republicans saying that we should spend the money that has already been allocated before we really get back to a $3 trillion bill or anything like that. So I want to ask you, from where we stand right now, are you optimistic in a potential bill, or do you think that, once again, this will be sidelined?
I think it's what we're seeing, Alex, is just more political theater from the Democrats. I don't think they want a bill. Aside from the dollars that we're apart, McConnell's bill is estimated, I've heard $300 billion, I've heard $500 billion. The Democrats started out at $3 billion. They said they would settle for $2 billion. But when you look at the hurdles that they put in front of this president, I don't think they really want to come to a conclusion. They want to keep this going, unfortunately, as long as they can. They think it plays out for them politically. And their main motivation is to defeat this president. And, I mean, it's so disingenuous for what Nancy Pelosi's doing, to say the things that she's saying, try to put the deaths on the president's watch is just unfair.
No, and I think that it's worth noting, too, that, I mean, we asked the American people to close down their businesses indefinitely to some degree. I mean, we told them at the beginning that it was going to be 15 days. We threw them $1,200, said things would get back to normal. There's some businesses in some states right now that still can't reopen. So I understand their discontent, if you will, the idea that many Americans are upset right now, and maybe some politicians. But I think you're right that there is a path to some relief for these Americans to some degree. But when it comes to the idea for Democrats not to want to allocate some of the funds right now, does it come back to the idea that they just don't want to stimulate the economy 2 months out from the election? They'd rather push this off a little bit closer to the election?
I think they want to keep the businesses shut down. Case in point, the hair salon that Ms. Pelosi went to, that poor lady's been shut down has not made a paycheck, from what I understand, for 4 to 6 months. And, for other businesses are facing the same plight. The oxygen that keeps this economy going, both from paying taxes, for supporting our state governments, is business. And they're not being allowed to do that. And one important thing that they balked on is a liability protection. Because who wants to go through a frivolous lawsuit for somebody claiming they had the COVID when they came back to work? It's continues to amaze me, the hypocrisy that the Democrats are using for this. And the vaccine, who would oppose a vaccine? This president has cut the time for a vaccine approval from 4 years. It would be roughly a year if we get it to the end of this year. So he's cut regulations. He's brought in the private sector. And why are they not happy about that? Yeah. But it baffles me.
No, and I mean, this is the same thing. We can look back to Senator Tim Scott's bill about police reforms. I mean, it was something that during any other time, Democrats would have championed as a bill. They would have said that these are remarkable reforms. It's the proper ones. Republicans were willing to make some of them. But over the issue of qualified immunity, Democrats said, you know what? It's all or nothing. And if I'm not going to make an incremental improvement, I'll wait for my delayed perfection somewhere else down the road. I think that's what they're saying. But I think that's another issue. You wrote a recent op-ed about this in the Washington Examiner, saying that the response to the riots, the response to the calls for police reforms, that's really something that is highlighting the differences between the two parties right now. So can you elaborate on that thought a little bit?
Absolutely. You look at the cities that have had where they basically burned the city down. Look at Portland. Look at Milwaukee. Look at Chicago, Seattle, and look at they're basically a one-party system of government. Portland has not had a Republican mayor for 40 years. Milwaukee, 114 years. Chicago, 89 years. Seattle, 56 years. When are the people of these cities going to wake up and say enough is enough? And you've got the Republican Party. Look at the states that they run, either from the governorship or through the mayor. And why hasn't there been Oklahoma City, Charleston? They're Republican run. They're strict on law and order. And it's real simple for conservatives. If you break the law, you go to jail. And for some reason, the Democrats don't believe that. And actually, they're encouraging the riots to continue, particularly Kamala Harris. No Democrat has come out to oppose it. And it's so sad to see these businesses being burned down. They lost their life savings. You can't wave a magic wand and get these buildings put back up. You're looking at a year or more to get back in business.
Right, and the mere fact that some in the media or even politics are trying to justify those actions by saying, oh, well, it's insured property. That ignores the fact that those individuals are now going to go, as you said, probably a year without making an income. They don't have their brick and mortar store. They don't have the items in that store anymore that to go through filing insurance claims. I mean, the idea that some people are justifying rioting, arson, and looting is completely asinine to me. I mean, it's something that is completely bizarre. But I want to get your quick comment on this before I let you go. What do you make of the Democratic pivot on this issue then? Because some of them, for example, are saying, well, we're against this all of a sudden. But as you noted right there, many of them are on the record saying this in the past.
Well, they're against it because the poll numbers were dropping.
Yeah.
In other words, they saw that the public was not buying it. And I tell you the other thing, Alex, that you're going to see, and I think the Washington sheriff refused to go in when the governor would not allow them to help. Same thing with calling in the National Guard that the president has, if they just ask. But you're going to have to see more of that, and maybe they will wake up. But it's so sad to see what's happening to the country. But I think it's a clear difference now. The public is going to choose between conservatives who believe in law and order versus Democrats who are encouraging the rioting because they think it helps them politically.
Yeah, and I think that's the shame of this, that politics has even got into this conversation to begin with, because a majority of Americans do not like what they're seeing on the streets right now, and I think November will be the deciding factor of really how they feel about that, as many are scared right now to speak out as we hear from silent voters, things of that nature. But Representative Ralph Norman, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.